Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the alien fleet move closer to the helpless colony ship. The USS Defiant was just an exploration vessel, not built for fighting, but Jake could not look away from what was happening. 12. Zephyrian warships surrounded one defenseless transport filled with families trying to reach a new home. Amy Carter worked at the communications station next to him. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she tried to get a clear signal from the colony ship. The static cleared for a moment and desperate voices filled the bridge. "This is Captain Harris of the colony ship New Dawn. We have 3,000 civilians aboard, including 800 children. The Zephyrians are demanding we surrender all our supplies and credits. Please, someone help us." Jake's hands tightened into fists. The Zephyrian raiders had been attacking ships in this sector for months. They took what they wanted and left people to die in space. Everyone knew about it, but no one did anything to stop them. "Sir, we're getting a response from Galactic Command," Amy said. The cold voice of a bureaucrat filled the bridge. "Colony ship New Dawn, this is Galactic Command. We have received your distress call. After reviewing economic impact assessments and military resource allocation, we recommend immediate surrender to avoid unnecessary casualties. Galactic forces are currently committed to higher priority operations." Jake felt his blood turn hot. Higher priority operations? That meant protecting trade routes where the big companies made their money. Regular people trying to build new lives meant nothing to them. "Captain Morrison, what are your orders?" asked Lieutenant Ben Walsh from the weapons station. Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was small, just 23 people on an exploration ship. They had basic shields and 2 small plasma cannons that were meant for clearing space debris, not fighting warships. Any military computer would calculate their chances of winning at 0. But Jake remembered the stories his grandfather told him when he was young. Stories about knights who rode horses into battle against impossible odds. Men who fought not because they could win, but because it was right. His grandfather said those knights lived by a code that meant more than their own lives. "The galaxy thinks those old stories are foolish," his grandfather had said. "But maybe the galaxy is wrong." "All hands, battle stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "We're going in." His crew stared at him. Amy's mouth fell open. Ben shook his head like he had not heard correctly. "Sir, that's 12 warships," Ben said. "We don't have the weapons or armor to fight them." "Maybe not," Jake replied. "But those people have children on that ship. Children who are counting on someone to help them." Jake watched his crew think about his words. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Something that had been sleeping inside them for a long time. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about heroes," Amy said quietly. "People who helped others even when it was dangerous." "Old Earth stories?" added Chief Engineer Lisa Torres from the engine room through the CUM system. "My family kept books about knights and heroes. I thought they were just fairy tales." "Maybe they don't have to be," Jake said. The USS Defiant turned toward the Zephyrian fleet. Jake knew they would probably die, but he also knew they would die trying to save innocent people. That had to count for something. "Amy, open a channel to the Zephyrian command ship," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Defiant. You will release that colony ship immediately and leave this system." Harsh laughter came through the speakers. "Human, you pilot a small exploration vessel with no weapons worth mentioning. You threaten ships that could destroy you without effort. Why do you do this foolish thing?" "Because it's right," Jake answered simply. More laughter. "Right? Wrong? These are words that mean nothing in space? Only strength matters. Only survival matters. You will watch us take what we want from these colonists, and then you will leave." "No," Jake said, "we won't." The Zephyrian commander's voice turned cold. "Then you will die with them." The alien warships began to move. Jake watched them spread out to surround his ship while keeping the colony transport trapped in the middle. Standard tactics for dealing with a rescue attempt. "Ben, target their lead ship," Jake ordered. "Lisa, give me everything the engines have." Sir, even if we damage one ship, the others will destroy us in seconds, Ben warned. Then we better make those seconds count, Jake replied. The USS Defiant charged forward into the center of the Zephyrian formation. Jake's crew worked with desperate efficiency, each person doing their job while knowing they were probably flying toward death, but something strange happened as they flew closer to the enemy ships. Jake felt a calm settle over him. This was what his grandfather's stories had been about. This moment when a person chose to be more than just another survivor in a cold universe. The stars watched as one small human ship flew toward 12 alien warships to save people they had never met. The news spread through human space like wildfire. Jake Morrison and his crew had somehow won an impossible battle against 12 Zephyrian warships. The USS Defiant was barely held together with emergency repairs, and half the crew was in the medical bay, but they had saved every single person on that colony ship. Admiral Lisa Grant sat in her office on Earth reading the battle reports for the third time. The numbers made no sense. One exploration vessel against 12 military warships should have ended with the humans becoming space dust. Instead, the Zephyrians had retreated after losing 4 ships and having 3 more badly damaged. Send for Captain Morrison, she told her aide. I want to know how this happened. 3 days later, Jake stood in the Admiral's office with his arm in a medical brace and burn marks still visible on his uniform. His ship was in dry dock getting rebuilt from the inside out. Captain Morrison, your actions were reckless and violated several protocols, Admiral Grant began. You engaged a superior force without authorization. You ignored direct orders from Galactic Command to avoid conflict. The diplomatic problems alone could take months to resolve. Jake looked at her with tired eyes. Admiral, 3,000 people are alive because we chose to act. 800 children are going to grow up because we didn't follow protocols. The galaxy doesn't work that way anymore, Morrison. We have treaties with the Zephyrians. We have economic agreements and trade relationships. The age of heroic gestures ended centuries ago when we learned that survival requires compromise. Maybe survival isn't enough, Jake said quietly. Admiral Grant stared at him. What did you say? Maybe just staying alive isn't enough reason to live, Jake repeated. Maybe there are things worth fighting for even when you might lose. The Admiral leaned back in her chair. She had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets that protected human colonies across the galaxy. But she had never heard a junior officer talk about ideas that sounded like they came from ancient history books. Captain, you're being reassigned to training duty on Mars. Your ship will be given to someone who understands modern military doctrine. Jake nodded and left the office. But the story of his battle was already spreading to every human world and space station. People who had never heard of the USS Defiant suddenly knew the name of every crew member who had risked their lives to save strangers. On the Mining Station series, Commander Ben Walsh read the battle report to his security team. Morrison's crew used their exploration sensors to predict where the Zephyrian ships would move. They fired their plasma cannons at empty space and the enemy flew right into the shots. That's impossible, said one of his officers. You can't hit a moving target by shooting where it isn't. Unless you understand how they think, Walsh replied. Morrison figured out the Zephyrian attack patterns and used them against the raiders. But that's not the important part. What's the important part, sir? The important part is that they tried. They saw people in danger and decided to help even when it looked hopeless. Walsh began training his security teams differently. Instead of just following orders and protecting company property, he taught them about protecting innocent people. He called it honor protocols, though he wasn't sure where that name came from. On the patrol ship Vigilant, Lieutenant Colonel Kate Rivers gathered her Marines for a meeting. I want to tell you about something that happened last week, she said. A small exploration ship saved 3,000 colonists from Zephyrian raiders. The Marines listened as she explained how Jake Morrison's crew had fought impossible odds to save people they had never met. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Ma'am, why are you telling us this? Asked Sergeant Danny Wright. Because maybe we've forgotten what we're supposed to be fighting for, Rivers replied. We protect trade routes and corporate interests, we follow orders and complete missions. But when did we stop protecting people just because it was right? Rivers started teaching her Marines about concepts that military schools had stopped discussing. Decades ago, duty that went beyond following orders. Honor that meant more than completing missions. The idea that some things were worth dying for, across human space, similar conversations were happening. The story of the USS Defiant had awakened something that had been sleeping in the human heart. People remembered old stories their grandparents had told them about heroes and knights and warriors who fought for justice instead of profit, the alien. Governments watched these developments with growing concern. Human behavior was becoming unpredictable. Ships were deviating from planned routes to investigate distress calls. Military units were making decisions based on protecting civilians instead of following tactical doctrine. The humans are exhibiting dangerous instabilities, reported the Centauri ambassador to the Galactic Council. They speak of concepts that have no place in modern civilization: honor, sacrifice, protecting the weak. These ideas could destabilize the entire balance of power, but the changes were already spreading beyond human space. On distant worlds, ordinary people heard about Jake Morrison and his crew. They began asking questions about their own leaders and protectors. Why did help only come when it was profitable? Why were ancient ideas about courage and heroism considered primitive? The galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten for 1,000 years. Captain Lisa Torres was hauling grain to the outer colonies when the distress signal came through. Her cargo ship, New Horizon, was 3 days out from Earth with enough food to feed a small city for months. The signal was weak and broken, but clear. Enough to understand. This is Centauri Mining Station 7. We are under attack by pirates. 17 ships demanding surrender. We have no weapons and no defense. Please help us. Lisa's first officer, Mike Chun, looked up from his console. Captain, that's not our problem. We're a cargo hauler, not a military vessel. Standard procedure is to report it to the authorities and maintain course. Lisa stared at the communication display. Mining Station 7 had 2,000 workers and their families. The pirates would take everything valuable and probably kill anyone who couldn't pay for their own freedom. How long until the authorities can respond? She asked. At least 6 hours, Mike replied. Maybe more if they're busy with other calls. Lisa thought about Jake Morrison and his crew. Everyone in human space knew their story by now. How they had chosen to fight impossible odds to save people they had never met. She had read the reports and watched the news coverage like everyone else, but she had never thought about what it meant for her own life. Change course, she ordered. Set intercept for Mining Station 7. Her crew stared at her like she had lost her mind. The New Horizon was a cargo ship with no weapons, no armor, and no shields worth mentioning. The most dangerous thing they had ever faced was a broken loading crane. Captain, we can't fight pirates, said Chief Engineer Paul Davis from the engine room. We don't have anything to fight them with. We have something, Lisa replied. We have a choice to be more than what we are. The New Horizon changed course toward the mining station. Lisa's crew worked frantically to figure out how a cargo ship could possibly help against 17 pirate vessels. They had no weapons, but they had something else. They had mass. If we come in fast enough, we can ram their command ship, suggested Mike. Take out their leader and maybe the others will scatter. That's suicide, said Navigation Officer Karen White. We'll be destroyed on impact, maybe, Lisa said. But those miners will have a chance to escape while the pirates are dealing with us. The New Horizon accelerated toward the battle. Lisa watched the pirate ships on her scanner as they surrounded the mining station. The pirates were taking their time, enjoying the fear of their victims. They had done this many times before. This is Captain Torres of the cargo vessel New Horizon, Lisa announced on an open channel. Pirates, you will leave this system immediately or face the consequences. Laughter filled the bridge. Cargo ship, you carry food and supplies. We carry weapons and armor. Return to your course before we add you to our collection. No, Lisa. said simply. The pirate stopped laughing. The lead pirate ship turned toward the new horizon with weapons charging. Lisa pushed her engines to maximum and aimed directly at the pirate vessel. "All hands, brace for impact," she announced. The new horizon slammed into the pirate command ship at full speed. The cargo vessel's hull cracked and split, but her massive bulk drove through the pirates' shields and armor. Both ships spun apart, badly damaged and venting atmosphere. The other pirate ships hesitated. They had never seen a cargo captain willing to ram their leader. While they tried to decide what to do, security ships from the inner system arrived to help the miners. The pirates fled, leaving their damaged command ship behind. Lisa Torres and her crew survived the collision, but their ship was destroyed. The miners rescued them and declared them heroes. The story spread even faster than Jake Morrison's battle had. A cargo captain who chose to ram pirates with her unarmed ship. A crew who risked everything to save people they had never met. News reporters called it inspiring. Military analysts called it impossible. But people across human space called it something else. They called it the return of honor. Similar incidents began happening throughout human space. Captain Alex Stone used his merchant vessel to shield a refugee convoy from raiders. Dr. Nancy Bell refused to abandon her patients during a station evacuation, staying behind to treat the wounded while others fled to safety. Security Chief Rick Carter stood between armed smugglers and a group of civilian families, fighting with nothing but a stunner and determination. Each story inspired others. People who had lived their entire lives following safe, practical rules suddenly found themselves making choices that their grandparents would have understood, choices that put other people's lives ahead of their own safety. The alien government sent official complaints to Earth's leadership. Human behavior was becoming unpredictable and dangerous. Ships were abandoning profitable routes to answer distress calls. Military units were protecting civilians instead of following tactical doctrine. "Your people are destabilizing the established order," declared the Hegemony Council in a formal statement. These reckless actions threaten the carefully maintained balance of power that has kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. Earth's President Maria Santos read the complaints with growing pride. For the first time in generations, humans were acting like the heroes from the old stories. They were choosing to stand for something greater than profit and survival. "Perhaps," she said to her advisors, "it's time the galaxy remembered what it means to have principles worth fighting for." The Hegemony Council met in emergency session on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from 12 major galactic powers sat around a circular table, their alien faces showing concern and anger. The human delegate, Ambassador John Hayes, sat alone at one end while the others glared at him. "The human problem has gone too far," declared Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. "Your people ignore established protocols and interfere in matters that do not concern them. This cannot continue." Ambassador Hayes looked around the table at faces that belonged to a species humanity had traded with for centuries. "We help people in distress. How is that a problem?" "Because it disrupts the natural order," replied Councillor Thekma of the Centauri Federation. "The strong take what they need from the weak. The weak adapt or perish. This has been the way of the galaxy for millennia. Your people speak of honor and duty as if these ancient concepts have meaning in modern civilization," added Representative Zolkar of the Orion Syndicate. "They risk valuable ships and trained personnel to save strangers. This is wasteful and dangerous." Hayes stood up slowly. "Dangerous to who? To pirates and raiders who prey on innocent people? To corporations that profit from suffering? Yes, I suppose honor is dangerous to those who benefit from a galaxy without conscience." The alien representatives exchanged glances. They had expected the human to apologize and promise to control his people's behavior. Instead, he was defending actions that threatened everything they had built. "We are imposing immediate sanctions," announced Chancellor Vextar. "All trade agreements with human worlds are suspended. Human ships are banned from our space. Your people will learn that survival requires cooperation with established authority." "And if we refuse?" Hayes asked. Then you will be declared a rogue species and treated accordingly. Vexstar replied coldly. Hayes nodded and gathered his papers. Then I suppose we'll have to find our own way. The sanctions took effect immediately. Human ships were turned away from alien ports. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were closed. Corporate representatives who had made fortunes from human commerce suddenly found their contracts canceled on Earth. President Maria Santos called an emergency meeting of the Human Defense Council. Military leaders and civilian officials gathered in the war room to discuss their response to the galaxy's ultimatum. The economic impact will be severe, reported Treasury Secretary Robert Kim. We depend on alien technology and rare materials for our advanced industries. Without trade, our standard of living will drop significantly. They're trying to starve us into submission, said Defense Minister Janet Brown. Force us to abandon our principles and return to the old ways. President Santos listened to the reports and recommendations. The practical choice was clear. Apologize to the aliens, promise to control human behavior, and return to the comfortable arrangement where everyone minded their own business while the strong preyed on the weak. What do our people think? She asked. The polls show overwhelming support for our actions, replied Communications Director Carl Mitchell. 87% of humans approve of helping others even when it's costly. They're calling it the return of honor, Santos smiled. Then we adapt. If the galaxy won't trade with us, we'll trade with ourselves. If they won't let us use their technology, we'll build our own. And if they think isolation will make us weak, they're about to learn how wrong they are. The humans did adapt. They formed new trade networks between their own worlds. They shared technology and resources freely instead of hoarding them for profit. Most importantly, they continued to act according to their rediscovered principles. When the Carillion plague threatened to wipe out an entire species, human medical teams volunteered to help despite the quarantine risks. The aliens had written off the Carillions as economically worthless, but humans saw only people who needed saving. Dr. Sarah Williams led a team of volunteers into the plague zone. We might not come back, she told her staff. The disease is 90% fatal and we don't have a cure yet. Then we better work fast, replied her assistant. Dr. Mark Johnson. They worked for weeks in contaminated environments, risking their lives to treat patients that their own governments had abandoned. When they finally developed a treatment, they shared it freely with anyone who needed it. The Carillion ambassador to Earth wept when he thanked the human doctors. Your people saved my entire species. We will never forget this kindness. Similar stories spread throughout the galaxy. When slavers attacked mining colonies, human patrol ships appeared to drive them off. When pirates threatened merchant convoys, human escorts volunteered to protect them. When natural disasters struck remote worlds, human relief ships arrived. With supplies and medical aid. Captain Danny Wright of the patrol vessel Vigilant became famous when he held off an entire Thakari assault fleet while civilian transports evacuated a research station. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered, but he fought until his engines failed and his weapons ran dry. His last transmission before his ship was destroyed became a rallying cry across human space. Some things are worth dying for. Some people are worth saving. This is what it means to be human. The galaxy watched in amazement as humans chose principle over profit, honor over survival, and courage over comfort. The old order was cracking, and something new was beginning to emerge from the ruins. The change started small on distant worlds far from the galactic center. A Centauri freighter captain named Zekalon received a distress call from a passenger liner under attack by pirates. Standard procedure was to report it to authorities and continue on his route. But Zekalon had heard the stories about human crews who risked everything to save strangers. Why should humans be the only ones with courage? He asked his crew. Zekalon's ship was old and slow, designed for carrying cargo rather than fighting. But he turned toward the battle anyway, using his massive bulk to ram the lead pirate vessel just as Lisa Torres had done months earlier. The pirates fled, and 300 passengers lived because one alien captain chose to act like a human knight. The story spread through Centauri space like wildfire. Other captains began asking themselves the same question. Why should only humans be willing to die for strangers? What had happened to their own traditions of honor and courage? On the Orion homeworld, a merchant captain named Valtara shared her cargo with refugees despite the financial loss. Profit means nothing if we lose our souls, she told the corporate executives, who demanded an explanation for her actions. The transformation wasn't limited to ship captains on a dozen worlds. Ordinary people began remembering their own forgotten stories about heroes and warriors who fought for justice instead of personal gain. The humans had shown them that such ideals didn't have to remain buried in ancient history. Jake Morrison, now teaching at the Mars Defense Academy, received a message that changed everything. It came from Captain Steve Parker of the heavy cruiser Endeavour, but the signature showed it was approved by officers from 6 different species. Sir, we want to make this official, the message read. We're forming something new. A brotherhood of those who choose to live by the old codes. We're calling it the Stellar Knights Order. Jake smiled as he read the proposal. They wanted to create a formal organization dedicated to protecting the innocent and defending the weak. Not a military force controlled by governments, but a volunteer group that serves something greater than politics or profit. We need someone to lead us, Parker's message continued. Someone who showed us what it means to be a knight. Will you accept command of the order? Jake looked out his window at the red landscape of Mars. 3 months ago, he had been a disgraced captain teaching basic tactics to cadets. Now people from across the galaxy wanted him to lead a movement that could change civilization itself. He sent back a simple reply. I accept. The first official mission of the Stellar Knights came 2 weeks later. Intelligence reports showed that the Crimson Syndicate was operating a massive slave camp in the Outer Rim, holding thousands of prisoners from dozens of species. The galactic authorities knew about it but considered military action too expensive and politically complicated. We go in tomorrow? Jake told his team at their first meeting on the neutral station Haven's Rest. 37 volunteers from 12 different species. Our mission is simple: free the prisoners and shut down the camp. The team included humans like Commander Steve Parker and Lieutenant Ben Walsh, but also aliens who had joined the movement. Zekalon the Centauri captain was there, along with Valtara, the Orion merchant, and a dozen others who had chosen honor over safety. Sir, what makes us different from any other military unit? Asked Ensign Danny Wright, a young human who had volunteered after hearing about Captain Wright's sacrifice. We don't fight for governments or corporations, Jake replied. We don't follow orders just because someone with higher rank gives them. We fight for people who can't fight for themselves. We are knights, and knights serve something greater than themselves. The mission launched at dawn. The Stellar Knights approached the slave camp in ships that flew the new banner Jake had designed, a simple star surrounded by a circle, representing the light that drives away darkness. The Syndicate guards were expecting smugglers or pirates, not a coordinated rescue operation. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Stellar Knights Order, he announced as his ships surrounded the camp. You will release all prisoners immediately. And surrender your weapons, the Syndicate commander laughed. Knights, what foolish game is this? We have defense platforms and armed guards. You have a handful of ships and romantic ideas. We have something better, Jake replied. We have a cause worth dying for. The battle lasted 3 hours. The Stellar Knights fought with determination. That surprised even themselves. They protected each other like family and refused to retreat even when the odds turned against them. When the smoke cleared, the slave camp was in ruins and 2,000 prisoners were free. The galaxy watched in shock as news reports showed former slaves embracing their rescuers. Knights from different species working together to load medical supplies and evacuate the wounded. The old divisions between humans and aliens seemed to matter less than the shared commitment to protecting the innocent. This is just the beginning, Jake told a reporter as his damaged ship limped back to base. Every person who chooses courage over comfort, every soul who stands up for what's right, is a knight whether they wear our banner or not. Applications to join the Stellar Knights Order flooded in from across the galaxy. The Age of Heroes had returned, and the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter in celebration. The old galaxy was dying, and something new was being born in its place. On world after world, people who had lived their entire lives under cold, calculating governments began demanding leaders who would act with honor instead of mere self-interest. The Stellar Knights Order had grown from 37 volunteers to over 10,000 members, representing 43 different species. Jake Morrison stood before the newly formed Galactic Assembly on the neutral world of Unity Station. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to write new laws for interstellar civilization. Many of the old Hegemony Council members were gone, replaced by leaders who understood that survival was not enough reason to live. We have learned that prosperity without honor is hollow, Jake told the assembly. Progress without compassion is meaningless. Strength without justice is just another form of weakness. The galaxy forgot that knights once existed, but we have remembered an important truth. There is something in all of us that yearns to be more than what we are. The Centauri delegate, Captain Zekalon, who had become a hero to his own people, stood to speak. The humans showed us that the old ways were not the only ways. They reminded us that our ancestors also had codes of honor, traditions of protecting the weak and standing against tyranny. We had forgotten who we were meant to be. Similar words came from representatives across the assembly. The Orion delegate spoke of merchant captains who now shared their wealth with those in need. The Carillion ambassador thanked the humans again for saving his entire species from plague. Even former enemies praised the changes that the Night Movement had brought to their worlds, but the most important speaker was someone Jake had never expected to see. Chancellor Vexstar of the Zephyrian Empire stood slowly, his scaled face showing emotions that his people rarely displayed in public. I led the effort to punish humanity for their reckless behavior, Vexstar said quietly. I believe that order and stability mattered more than individual conscience. I was wrong. The assembly fell silent. The Zephyrians had been the most vocal opponents of the Night Movement, calling it dangerous and primitive. 3 weeks ago, my own son was captured by pirates in the Outer Rim, Vexstar continued. Under our old system, I would have negotiated for his release or written him off as an acceptable loss. Instead, a mixed crew of Stellar Knights risked their lives to save him and 30 other prisoners. They asked for nothing in return. Vexstar looked directly at Jake. Commander Morrison, your people taught us that some things are more important than survival. Some ideals are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible. The Zephyrian Empire formally requests to join the new Galactic Charter. The applause that followed lasted for several minutes. The last holdout against the Night Movement had finally joined the growing alliance of worlds that chose honor over expedience. The new Galactic Charter was signed 3 days later. It established simple principles that would have seemed impossible. Just 2 years earlier, the strong had a duty to protect the weak. Economic gain could never justify ignoring suffering. Every species had the right to ask for help and the obligation to provide it when possible. Jake watched the ceremony from the observation deck of his flagship, the USS Redemption. The ship had been built by combined efforts from dozen species, each contributing their best technology to create something that belonged to all of them. It flew the banner of the Stellar Knights but served the entire galaxy. Sir, we're receiving a distress call, announced Captain Linda Gray, his second in command. Jake smiled. Even during the most important diplomatic event in galactic history, somewhere in the vast darkness of space, people needed help. That would never change. What's the situation? He asked. Pirate attack on a refugee convoy in the Kepler system. Local authorities are 6 hours away. The convoy has mostly families trying to reach the agricultural worlds. How many ships do we have available? 3 cruisers and a medical frigate? The pirates have 8 vessels, but they're older models. Jake nodded. Signal the fleet. We're going in. Linda raised an eyebrow. Sir, shouldn't we stay for the treaty signing? This is the most important moment in galactic history. No, Jake replied as he headed for the bridge. This is the most important moment in galactic history. Right here, right now, when we choose to help people we've never met because it's the right thing to do? The USS Redemption and her escort ships left Unity Station at full speed, racing toward another impossible fight against overwhelming odds. But this time they weren't alone. Ships from 6 different species had heard the same distress call and were converging on the same coordinates. The age of the Stellar Knights had truly begun. Across the galaxy, beings who had forgotten the meaning of courage, honor, and sacrifice were remembering. Children grew up hearing stories about heroes instead of profitable business deals. Leaders made decisions based on protecting their people. Instead of protecting their power, the pirates who attacked that refugee convoy found themselves facing not just human knights, but Centauri honor guards, Orion defenders, and even reformed Zephyrian patrol ships. The convoy was saved without losing a single ship. Captain Linda Gray stood on the bridge of the Redemption as they escorted the refugees to safety. Sir, another distress call is coming in from the Vega sector. Jake Morrison, commander of the Stellar Knights Order and defender of the innocent, smiled as he gave the order that had become the motto of the new galaxy. Knights never let the innocent suffer while they have the power to act. Set course for Vega. Maximum speed. The stars watched as ships bearing the banner of honor raced through the darkness to bring light to those who needed it most. The galaxy had forgotten that knights existed, but humanity had brought them back, and the universe would never be the same.